Now, in the 1940s, the world changed, and it put the pressure on FDR to actually stop the madness. In 1939, when Poland was invaded, we were still going down this New Deal road. And Morgenthau and all the people that were part of the New Deal were starting to turn on FDR and saying, it doesn't work. What you're doing isn't working. And they started to come out against him, and his coalition started to fall apart as we were approaching 1940. Well, then Germany, who he didn't care about, and not Ed Kennedy, what was his father's name? Joseph Kennedy. Joseph Kennedy was over in England, and he said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You know what they do to the Jews? They do to the Jews. And everybody was kowtowing, Chamberlain, everybody, kowtowing to Hitler until he went and invaded Poland. As soon as he invaded Poland, everybody knew there's trouble. Churchill actually wrote a letter to FDR because FDR would not help. FDR would not build ships. In fact, there was the Lend-Lease Act that was being debated in Congress, and that was, can we build ships, lend them, lease them, the things that they need to be able to stop Germany? Well, nobody wanted to do that because it was the same exact forces at play that hated the West, the same exact forces that loved National Socialism as understood by Hitler or Mussolini. They didn't like Hitler, but they loved Mussolini. They loved the fascist thing, and they didn't mind the National Socialist. And the other group in America loved the communists, and they were in our own government. They thought this was the new way, just as we do now. Now we think state capitalism is the way to go. Now we think that China is the new model. Well, that's state capitalism. It's socialism. It's nationalism. It's the same thing. And so we're going down the road just like everybody was going down the road in the 1930s. Then Hitler turned and everybody's like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't think this would get bad. Well, it did. Churchill was brought back in. Churchill writes a letter, writes telegrams, letters, everything. Help, 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 help. FDR wouldn't. Finally, Churchill writes a letter and says, Mr. President, the British Navy is about to be taken. We don't have a chance without you. And I want you to know that within the next 6 months, the British Navy will fall and it will be repainted with swastikas, and they will then be on your shore. So I'm giving you the warning that within the next 6 months, you will be alone. And that's the only thing that we had going for us. That letter actually turned FDR, and he said, wow, this is really serious. Yes, sir, it is. That's when he stopped his New Deal policies, and that's when he went to the guy who was now running Chevrolet. This is the guy who took Chevy from General Motors. He was the guy. It wasn't Henry Ford. It was this guy. I want to say Knutson, but I can't remember his name now. I apologize for that. But he was the guy who came, and he really was the one who taught Henry Ford how to do the assembly line. He came, and he was asked by the president, and he was the guy, one of the guys that the president named and said, evil capitalist like that guy. Evil capitalists are wrecking us. And so when the president had to call somebody and say, you have to turn the industry back on, you have to turn America's engine back on, how do we do it? He called him. And he hated him. In fact, his family sat around at dinner when he made the announcement. He said, I'm going to go meet with FDR. He wants my help to turn this thing around. And his family went crazy. His children said, Dad, are you out of your mind? He's tried to destroy you. He's tried to do everything he could to destroy America. How could you possibly help him? He said, I'm not helping him. I'm helping our country. He went to Washington and he did it, and he worked for $1 a year. In the end, FDR still went and tried to destroy him. But he's the reason we won the war, because he knew a capitalist how to turn everything back on. And we created more ships, and the economy turned. Everything turned because of that. There is the possibility that things get so bad that this president realizes we are done as a nation unless we go to the capitalists and turn this engine back on, because oil is going to go through the roof, I fear. If it does, we're in deep, deep trouble. If the Middle East falls and spirals out of control, we're in deep trouble financially. We can still turn it. The question is, do you believe in the end that this president is a patriot that doesn't want to see America completely destroyed? Because there were many of our grandparents, 48% of our grandparents, that felt the same way about FDR as we do about this president. That the government is getting out of control, that we're starting to head towards tyranny, and that this guy doesn't know what he's doing and doesn't love the country. And in the end, FDR showed that, yes, he did want America to survive. Let's pray that this president is exactly like FDR, that in the end, he does love the country, and he will do the right thing. And when we have our back up against the wall, he shows us that, yes, this system can produce. And watch us produce.